What's crazy is I actually think, Joe, that the flooding was the reason why we're hearing about this Epstein stuff right now. I think it was actually a planned distraction, unfortunately. That's the most important thing. There was no client list. There was no blackmail, and nobody else is going to be charged in the Epstein scandal. We've heard the term deep state a lot.
Yes.
We've heard the term administrative state. It's the same thing. We've heard the term permanent Washington. These are people that their very life existence, it is required that they have those jobs. And so if your entire livelihood rests on deceiving somebody, Joe, and you're a deceptive type of person to begin with because your morals are basically operational, then that's what you do.
This is Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags.
I'll be honest with you. Because of all the flooding stuff, because of all the news coverage we've been doing, we just had Dan Patrick on. We've had all sorts of people on to talk about what's going on in the state of Texas. I don't know much about what's going on with Epstein. I went on TikTok Live last night, and Epstein actually was brought up, and I know nothing about it. To that end, I want to bring in a guy that used to work for the FBI. We'll talk about Epstein and Bongino and Cash and what we know and Pam Bondi in a second. First of all, it's Kyle Seraphin. Kyle, appreciate you. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. I almost got a false start there. What's crazy is I actually think, Joe, that the flooding was the reason why we're hearing about this Epstein stuff right now. I think it was actually a planned distraction, unfortunately.
That's actually interesting, and we'll get into that in earnest. But it's important to note, you live in the Austin area. I'm south of you. I'm south of where the impact was, but the Guadalupe River is very close to where I live. So that's really been our focus for a while. I don't know much about Epstein. I want to get into that in a minute with you. But let's start with you and yours are fine, right?
We are fine. We're on the high ground. We're only about 700 yards away from the San Gabriel River, which also flooded. It flooded where I live, which is up near Liberty Hill. There were entire neighborhoods that are to my east that got wiped out. There are neighborhoods to my west that got wiped out. We happen to be 700 yards in the safe zone here, so we're not in the floodplain. But I did watch the water go up, and there's video that people took from drones right next to my neighborhood. It's half a mile from my back door, and the flood level went up 35 feet. It's insane. That's normally ankle-deep creeks, which, as you well know, you can walk across them, you can jump across them.
Right.
My kids will go play on the bare stones, and it was unsafe for a kayak, and it was hitting the bottom of the 183 bridge, which is usually 25 feet above it. So it was significant amounts of water, and of course we had a family member down in Comfort, which is very close to Kerrville, where the tragedies happened, and they lost everything. They lost their home. They saw 8 feet of water go in to their little single-story cottage, and it just devastated it. And it was an uninsurable area. So Ben Berkwan was down there with Real America's Voice the other day and doing some interviews, and actually managed to interview my kid's Aunt Elizabeth. It's my wife's godmother, who's I've known her for 16 years. They're the nicest people. They're the OG Texans that you meet, Joe, that are from Texas, that grew up in Texas, that have lived here their whole lives, kind of thing. And the nicest people in the world give you the shirt off their back, and they're left with vehicles that they got to move and nothing. All their worldly possessions got destroyed.
Well, I'm glad they're okay. I'm glad you're okay. My family is safe. Of course, a lot of people died. Over 100 people died. The blame game started like moment one, which was ridiculous. I had Dan Patrick, as I said, on a little while ago, and we talked to him about that, although he's not even going there. He just wants to talk about the recovery effort and how we do better next time. It's interesting that you said what you said in the beginning, though. I don't think the way you think. I'm not a former FBI agent. I'm not somebody who thinks on that sort of level of information when you dump it. I do know this, being in media for 36 years, that they'll dump a lot of things on a Friday night. No, nobody's going to pay attention to it on Saturday and Sunday because it's going into the weekend. But I did not think that because of the natural disaster that is the flood, somebody at the DOJ you think said, hey, let's put this stuff out now. It won't get as much attention. Is that what you think happened?
Yeah, and I think unfortunately, I think Donald Trump actually kind of gave that away in the White House earlier today. He was speaking and mentioned, we got all these problems in Texas and loss of life, and how can you be worried about Epstein on a time like this? Which, it really looks exactly like what I hoped it was not. The information about Epstein was actually leaked to Axios, of all places, and I can talk about that in a second, why that was the source, but they did that on a Sunday. And so, my Sunday going into Monday was a pretty lit up space where suddenly we now have a DOJ memo of questionable legitimacy circulating around. And then, of course, in the time since then, it's been confirmed by the White House, and the DOJ has put it up on their actual website. And it made it look like, there was a small possibility it was searching for a leak, what we would call a smoke test, where you put out something to certain people to see if they end up leaking it to the media, and you can find out if you've got leakers in your midst. It doesn't look like that. This looks like it was a calculated leak. And unfortunately, as somebody who I introduced to Kash Patel told Kash Patel when he was worried about media leaks, this is before he was actually confirmed, My friend explained to him that media leaks are in fact a tool of the FBI director, and they can be used for good or for ill. They've been used for at least the last 20 years that I'm aware of it. We saw it under Jim Comey. It happened under Chris Wray. And this is my belief, Joe. So this is Kyle's speculation. This is, educated guess sort of thing. I actually believe it was given to Axios because the knee-jerk reaction of the MAGA influencer crowd and the people that are generally on the conservative right look at Axios as sort of a foreign/enemy organization, fake news, take your pick. And you're immediately going to soften the blow of terrible news when you give it to a left-leaning source. So I think that was done by choice. I think it was done intentionally. And I think the people, they immediately softened the blow because you automatically had people doubting its legitimacy, doubting the credibility of the source that was coming in. Unfortunately, it ended up being confirmed just the day later. And this is the real salient piece, which I'll read from the memo. It's about a page and a half, so it's not real long. This is the thing that got everybody riled up. It says, quote, "This systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties." That's the most important thing. There was no client list. There was no blackmail, and nobody else is going to be charged in the Epstein scandal, we'll call it.
It's Kyle Seraphin. Kyle, let me stop you there because this is all very, very deep, and a deep understanding is necessary. I went on TikTok Live last night. I've got 1 million followers on TikTok now. I'll go live there and I'll do news and information, then I'll sing some songs. But as I was on last night talking about the Texas floods and how disgusting I felt it was to do the blame game and how they were lying about it not being staffed the way that it should have been staffed and all this other stuff, people kept saying, "What do you think about Epstein?" We're going, what are you talking about? The next part, well, but what about Epstein? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm in the middle of Texas where we're worried about these floods. So what you're saying actually worked on me, a guy who does information for a living. As they kept saying it, after I got off the live, I went and checked it out. I went, what is this? Because, look, I know and like Dan. I think you do too. I know and like Cash. Those are good guys. They both railed before they had these positions about how we weren't being told the truth, about how the deep state was hiding this, that, and the other. They specifically talked about Epstein and the Epstein files. Now, if it's true what that memo says, and by the way, you're right about Axios. When I use Axios as a source, I, as a conservative guy, will say to my audience, take it for what it's worth. Right. And then I'll read the story. So I think you're right about that too. I never thought on that level, though. Think about what they're telling us. Nothing happened. No client list, blackmailed nobody. Why is Ghislaine Maxwell behind bars?
Yeah, it's a mystery, except there was an entire, predicated court case and she ended up, so she's rightfully there and obviously things happened.
Oh, no, I agree with you. But if what they're saying is true, why is she there?
Exactly. Well, that, of course, is the question that social media is asking and hammering. And it doesn't matter what Dan Bongino or Kash Patel, point out. They could talk about a drug bust. They could talk about Operation, I think they called it Summer Heat, which is an annual thing the FBI does to try to knock down violent crime in big cities. And, you can go and talk about anything else you want. That was the spin that Carolyn Levitt tried while she was sitting at the White House press briefing, and she's trying to tell people that, and nobody wants to hear it. And so this is why I think that actually it was done that way. The question was then asked of Donald Trump in a sort of Oval Office gaggle.
Yeah.
And he immediately said, "May I take this question?" It was asked of the question asked was, was Epstein involved with, they said working for, but what they mean is working alongside of, was he a recruited source, et cetera, for one of the U.S. intel agencies. And Donald Trump jumped in and the president said, "I'm going to take this question. Are you really talking about this when we have what's going on in Texas happening right now?" Wow. And, to me, I'm just an observer of what things happen and the way people think. And maybe they didn't tell Donald Trump. I hope they didn't. God, I hope they didn't tell him that's what they were going to do. But my instinct is this. The bad and nefarious actors that exist inside the FBI, they still exist there, Joe. There's no question about it. They've got people that they promoted this week in the last 2 days who got into their positions that have credible allegations that they were found in a state of undress with their superior.
Wow.
In the FBI gym in West Virginia. And by the way, that female was the only woman sitting at the table when Cash went out and visited CGIS, which is the facility out there.
Right.
And she now is a deputy assistant director. Her name is Trudy Ford. And so we've got, there's bad actors promoting other bad actors. What better way to destroy the credibility of a Kash Patel who came in, as you said, talking about it on Glenn Beck, talking about it on every podcast that would hear him.
He was on my show 27 times or something talking about it.
And I guarantee you talked about the Epstein situation.
Yes. Of
because
course.
it's newsworthy. And he said
and
over
Dan
and over
talked
again,
about it every day on his podcast.
absolutely.
You're not being told the truth. There's something more here. The depth is deeper than you know. Believe me, there's going to be a day. And now we're supposed to accept this memo that was hidden on Axios during a flood in Texas. Listen, I like these people. I do. Kyle, you know me to be a truth teller. I like them. What do you think is going? Is there a silver lining? They're only doing this because they're going to tell us the truth later. Or do they really want us to forget about it now?
I think they want us to forget about it. And I think it's not actually coming from these two guys. This is the instinct that I've had from the beginning. I told this to Alex Jones the other day. I don't think Dan Bongino is there at the end of this year. I think he's massively frustrated. I've heard behind the scenes that he's miserable with what he's doing because he's not allowed to be that. I don't think he was probably the right guy in the first place, not because he's a bad person, but because the depth of the FBI is an insidious, nasty place. He walked into a place where every single person there wanted to see him fail. Wow. At the thing that he hoped to do. And so now he's having to cheerlead, because that's the job of the deputy director, run the bureau and cheer on the bureau. He's having to cheerlead the same people that he was calling out for years. That's got to be an awful feeling. I wouldn't want to have that. And at the same time, Kash Patel, in some ways, he got what he wanted. He wanted to be a big shot. He wanted to be in the Trump administration. He wanted to go out and talk tough and fly around in a jet and, go to UFCs. And so he's doing those things, and being the director is a pretty good gig. Running the bureau, which is what Bongino is supposed to be doing right now, is a horrible gig. It's not a gig that I would ever want. In fact, we were having these funny jokes. I was like, nobody I know would want that job. And the senior/retired FBI agents that would be interested in doing it, we actually had a deal that we worked out with Kash. If you were to appoint one of these guys, they'll do it for 6-9 months. They will have no friends when they're done doing the job properly. And then you got to appoint one of these guys to a federal judgeship, because they're never going to get a job again in their retirement. They're cooked. I think Dan is miserable. I don't think he's going to be able to. I think the people around him are giving him the worst possible advice. And the way you do this, and this is an an intelligence agency thing, Joe. What you do is you isolate, right? And who else do you have? Who else do you have for friends but us? So think about this. If I went out and destroyed your credibility with all the people that used to believe in the things that you had to say, and I went out there and I made you a liar, and I gave you bad information, and I told you the opposite of what you should be saying, and I gave you bad advice, and I told you it was the right way to do it. The other thing they do, and this is something I explained to Alex Jones the other day, it's a concept called ninjas out of the ceiling. And this is going to be mind-blowing for a lot of people. But when you train at Quantico, when you are going to become an FBI agent, they have some of the worst tactics in tactical training. It's a thing that we develop called training scars. So you'll go into a room doing a tactical clear with a rifle or a handgun, and you're looking for a bad guy, and then there's no one in there. And so you walk out of the room, and then somebody comes out from behind a hidden panel in a wall that's behind, like, I don't know, a piece of furniture.
Right.
And they shoot you in the back. A hidden panel in a room that doesn't exist in any room that I've searched. And I've searched dozens and dozens of houses. I've never seen someone pop out of a hidden panel in the wall. It's just not real. So you get this scar. You think people are constantly going to jump out of the ceiling or jump out of a hidden wall panel and shoot you in the back. So you get really kind of gun shy about this. They do the same thing with information, where they tell you at every moment, and I know this because I got this call. I did 20 plus what they called high priority surveillance priority. They activate us on a Sunday. They'd call us at midnight and they'd go, we got a terrorist. He's about to do some terrorist thing. We need you to get on a plane and fly out there and keep an eye on him until we can, deal with him. So I would do that. It'd be on a Sunday while my mom was visiting from out of town. It'd be at 2:00 in the morning. You get the call and it's like, okay, by 6 a.m. you're on a flight. You've got your bag packed and ready to go. About the 15th time you do that, and the guy never does anything terroristic, and he's not actually a real terrorist. He's like a white supremacist kid who wears khakis, and he's a jerk, and he tweets mean things on Reddit. The 15th time or so you do that, you realize they're full of it. They said they've been doing this to Dan. Dan has actually come out and said, I'm signing emergency FISAs at all hours of the night. So they're hitting him with the ninjas out of the ceiling attitude, but they're doing it with information. If you're not here at the desk, if you are not constantly funding the things we want to do and letting us do the intel investigations we want to do, New York City is going to explode. Washington, D.C. goes boom. Los Angeles is going to have a terror attack. Something bad will happen. There'll be, blood in the water. It'll be on your shoulders. You'll be the one shouldering that blame. And nobody wants to be the guy that's responsible for the next 9/11 or whatever it is. So they keep you in this perpetual state of fear. And then you've got the other guy who's out doing, Kash is doing Kash stuff. He's given vision and direction and living the life of the party, because he gets to go and speak to conferences and everybody's happy to see him. And he dresses like a cool guy instead of wearing a suit. And so there's all that. You've got two guys living very, very different lives. And I think one of them is going to be able to stick around. The other guy is not. And I don't think, because they're burning him out. And I think they're doing it on purpose. And I think that all of this was a credibility stomp.
It's Kyle Seraphin. It's Seraphin is his last name. At Kyle Seraphin over on YouTube, over on X, KyleSeraphin.com. Check out his great show that he does. He's an FBI whistleblower. It makes my brain hurt because I want these guys to do what they said they would do. And ninjas from the ceiling, of course, I've never heard that term before, but it makes sense. Constant barrage of if you don't this, then this is got to keep somebody on his toes and keep somebody on edge. But at the end of the day, we still don't know what really happened with Epstein. At the end of the day, we don't know where the client list is. I think you and I believe there is one. They can't just say there isn't one. We just got to buy it. So what's the bottom line intention? Too many people are implicated? If it were Trump, Kyle, it would have been leaked during Biden's years. If Trump is on there, that I believe it would have been leaked during Biden's years. They would have done anything. They indicted the guy 91 times. They didn't want him to win again. They didn't want him to be the president again. I think they would have, at least impartial, they would have let us know that he was one of these people. So I don't think it's about him. This is opinion, nothing more, nothing less. I guess nothing more, nothing less. Why did they do this? Why can't we see it?
So I agree with you with your assessment that if there had been any inclination, they would have cut off their nose to spite their face to go after Trump. And we saw everything about that. They actually destroyed credibility regularly with all the things that they could do. So I tend to agree with you on that. There's a couple of speculations that are out there. One of the speculations, this is something that Alex Jones told me yesterday, I can't substantiate it, and it doesn't sound true to me, is that Trump now is controlling the blackmail game. And so he's using it. He's fighting fire with fire, and he's trying to manipulate the ring of power, kind of like Mordor style, which is that's a terrible thing to do.
It is.
God, I hope that's not the case, because if you're someone who's willing to use child pornography and sexual abuse of minors, if you're going to use that for good or to control bad people, like, you are dancing with the devil. And so I hope that's not the case. I'm with you.
I hope it's not the case too. What else could be happening?
So the other possibility is that the information was destroyed, knowing that what these guys talked about for as long as they did, because it wasn't exactly quiet. And it's something that you and I have both heard, both from them directly and from all the podcasts and sort of media appearances they did. So what better way to destroy credibility than to not let them be able to follow through on their word? And so we had some fairly credible reports that there was information being destroyed in ways that could not be recovered. My buddy Garrett O'Boyle, who is another FBI whistleblower, he's currently unpaid for coming up on like 1,025 days. He still is technically an FBI employee with no check. And he had people reach out to him and say that there was destruction of documents and information that was happening before Cash was actually even getting sworn in. And so that's a possibility that this stuff was actually destroyed. The other possibility is it was destroyed piecemeal over time. But what we need to see then, if they actually want to regain any credibility, is they have to fire every single person that touched this improperly. And that actually is something you could track down and you could find
make
out.
a big deal out of it. Make us all know that you're doing that.
Very public.
But Kyle, wasn't it? Look, I like Pam Bondi. I've had her on the show. Wasn't it her that said the list is on my desk now? Wasn't it her who said, I have the information? Wasn't it her who said the Southern District of New York won't give me what I want and I'm going to make them? It's a truckload of information. Now we're to believe none of that exists?
Yeah, I have an instinct that she never saw any of it. Listen, people brief stuff. I think she was speaking out of turn. I've listened to the way that she responded, and it seemed very quick. It seemed like the answer that the people wanted to hear, and so that's what she was feeding them. I don't know enough about Pam Bondi. I've never spoken with her.
You think she believed that the information was on the way?
Yeah, I think so. But listen, she said some things that were alerting to me right away. One of the things she said is that I learned from a source that the information is the Southern District of New York. That's okay, Joe, let me unpack that for you real quickly. The Southern District of New York works for the Attorney General.
Right.
End of sentence. That's the end of it.
Right.
Like, they work for you. You don't need a source. You don't need a source. That's an employee. Then someone who works for the FBI is an employee of the Attorney General. If the Attorney General is the top of the food chain, all of the information that I got during the COVID chaos came from the DOJ, specifically like an assistant attorney general. That's what came down to us.
Wow.
So, it is a direct line from DOJ, Maine, or as we call it, Maine Justice, comes down to the FBI. So that doesn't fly with me. And to say that it's on the way or that it was truckloads, that sounds like boomer nonsense just between us. It sounds like something made for a Fox News audience, because the FBI doesn't deal in truckloads of documents. It deals in the same thing everyone else does, a computer, the same way you and I are talking. It has files on computers like Zoolander style. Yeah. So to say that the evidence was hanging out the SDNY makes no sense either. The evidence would have been held in the federal building in New York, if that's where it was, in an evidence locker done by the FBI, or it would be digitized, which a lot of it had to have been. And so it would have been in the file server that's called Sentinel. It would have been accessible, even not to everybody, because I'm sure it was a sensitive case, but it would have been accessible to the people who were at the top chain. None of that rang true.
What you just said, it bears this very quick question. And I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it for the audience. Are they doing most of what they're doing just for appearance? Just so that we'll believe something, even if it's not true?
I think they're being briefed on things that are false. That's my instinct, because the same people that listen, every single person in the FBI that thought they might lose their job packed their bags before Kash Patel was sworn in. And a couple of weeks afterwards, they unpacked them. I have people that are working in the Hoover building that have told me as much, that they were banker boxes ready to go. They thought they were the first ones to go. In fact,
why weren't they, Kyle? Why weren't they?
Because nobody wants to work in a place where everybody hates you. And so the goal was always, and this was the goal that I had actually laid out for Kash. We had phone calls about this. We had a slide deck. I guess I feel silly about it now because I gave him a slide deck and I thought it would actually be really helpful to him. They didn't use this plan. It would have been the plan to recapture the FBI. And I don't say that, I'm not trying to be prideful about it. I'm just saying I consulted with a lot of people. We got former agents together, retired guys, whistleblowers, et cetera. And we said, if you want to make the FBI the thing that you need, first of all, you shouldn't be there when the blood is being spilled, the metaphorical blood, right? The bloodletting where you have to cut a lot of positions.
Right.
And you shouldn't be there because you don't want to be the manager that's taking responsibility. You send in somebody that's a sacrificial deputy director, not Dan Bongino, somebody that I recommended, who would have done the job, who said that you need to make me a judge afterwards because he's an attorney and he wasn't going to get another job or any work afterwards.
Right.
And you have to axe every single person that's not with the agenda. They didn't do that. And so one of the things in law enforcement that you learn first thing is when you want to take somebody into custody, the first touch is the way the subject is going to decide whether they're going to fight you and whether they can win or whether or not they're going to comply with you because you're too strong. So
let me, because everything you say bears another question in my brain. It's Kyle Seraphin. Go to @KyleSeraphin, both on YouTube, on X. Go to KyleSeraphin.com. And Seraphin has a PH in the middle of it. It's not an F. Kash on my show, and I like Kash. I'm going to say it again. Mm-hmm. On my show said he wanted to dismantle the FBI, rebuild the FBI, wanted to change how the FBI works. I believe him. I believed him then. I believe that he's the same person today. The question that I can't seem to get an answer to, and I think that you've gotten very close to it, why aren't they doing what they said they would do? Because I believe them that they wanted to do it. What blockade, barrier, what wall did they run into that stopped them from doing what you and I both know they wanted to do?
We've heard the term deep state a lot.
Yes.
We've heard the term administrative state. It's the same thing. We've heard the term permanent Washington. These are people that their very life existence, it is required that they have those jobs. And so if your entire livelihood rests on deceiving somebody, Joe, and you're a deceptive type of person to begin with because your morals are basically operational, then that's what you do. If you don't clear out the FBI from the GS-15, which is the top of the GS pay scale, that would have been 2 levels above me when I was working there, and then all the SESers, what they call senior executive service, these are people that are on a bonus structure that do the senior work. This is your section chiefs. This is your deputy assistant directors, special agents in charge of the field offices, the assistant directors, executive assistant directors, et cetera. All these people, every single one of them went along with the COVID priorities. They went along with the going after Christians. They went after the J6ers. They all signed up to go after J6ers. So none of these people were on board with the Trump agenda. Whether they are generally conservative or not, they signed up to do whatever they were told.
Right.
That's problematic. And so you have an entire group, no matter if you get rid of 10 of them, you can get rid of 20 of them. And I think they got rid of like maybe a dozen or so. You have all of the ranks behind them, like teeth on a shark, are going to just fill into that spot. They march forward like the next soldier and they're in line to the point where on January 31st, it was reported, and I communicated to Kash, I was very excited about this, that they got rid of at least a dozen senior executives. One of those people was a guy named J. William Rivers.
Okay.
He's now the number 3 person in the FBI. He was formerly in charge of a field office that wasn't that important. He's the number 3 person. If Dan Bongino resigns, he will now step into the number 2 and run the FBI. He is the highest ranking, most senior FBI agent in the FBI, because Dan is not. He's coming in from another thing, so he's kind of a special appointee. Right. The most senior FBI agent now, the number 3, was someone that we actually had reported was fired because of the associations that he had.
It can't be because of incompetence in Kash. What I'm asking is, do they all have stacks of folders filled with leverage? I mean, how are these people moving up, being half undressed somewhere? How are they moving up, being somebody that we know is questionable at best? How is it happening, Kyle?
It's the worst possibility because I don't think Dan is a bad person. Like I said, I think he's out of his depth in this because Dan doesn't have the institutional knowledge of being in the FBI for 20 plus years, which is what the deputy director always has. So the only way that you could fill that shoe, if you could step into that role, you have to have outside consultants that know the FBI. I've had people like Kim Guilfoyle give me a call and ask me to vet an FBI agent. I can do it in 10 minutes. I can find out who the person is, what kind of human being they are. Are they a good teammate? Do they work good cases? Are they an honest operator? Do they have shady past? Do they have an OPR that's pending because of something they did? Like I can find out their shooting scores. Somebody will tell me whether they can shoot or not, whether they're a weapons guy, whether, if they've do time card fraud, if they're never where they're supposed to be. It's very easy to vet people if you have connections in the FBI.
Right.
If you have not worked in government in 14, 15 years, which is Dan's story, if you haven't worked in the FBI specifically, which is I don't have connections at the Commerce Department. I don't have connections at DOJ Maine, really. I know maybe one or two people. I don't have very many at the CIA. I have connections deep and wide inside the FBI. You need to know that with a phone call, you can vet somebody and find out if somebody's telling you the truth or if they're giving you ninjas out of the ceiling and they're telling you things that are not true. And the fact is that all the people that are sitting there in that senior executive service, they are they believe in the mission of the FBI very much. And the two part of it is that they have to have you believe it too, or they will lose their jobs. And so they have a significant, their life is on the line with this, at least their financial life. People do all kinds of wild stuff. I just don't think they have the depth. And as I said, the director always comes from outside the FBI. Always. It's not an FBI agent, with the exception of like one time, right? Louis Freeh was a former FBI agent. But the deputy is always the most senior person. And it's a climber. It's somebody that, wants to be a manager that worked cases 15 years ago, and then they immediately jumped on the management train. And they're not the kind of people I generally want to hang with. But we've had decent deputy directors of late. There's a guy named David Bowditch, who nobody knows the name of. I never heard of him. Yeah. He was a good deputy. He was the one that was running. He resigned or retired on a Friday afternoon with no notice, with no warning, because I think what was going on in the Bureau just after sort of like the January 6th stuff was not sitting well with him, and he left. He wasn't on that program. And then you have people like Paula Bate, who was the last one, and he was an acting director for a little while. And Paula Bate was a BLM supporter, and he's a leftist, and he's not the kind of person that you want. So you bring in the final takeover from the Obama years took place before Cash got there, and all the people that were managers from first line on, they all raised their hand and said, I want to be a manager in this FBI, which does the things that we all see. The only decent agents I knew, they were all case agents. They were GS 13s of seniority. They were people that wanted to go after bad guys and not deal with the politics of DC. And so my recommendation to Cash was straight away, it's like, turn the hourglass upside down, take the lowest ranking people and have them run things, because they're all competent and smart and they all know what the mission is. And unfortunately, they didn't do that. They kept too many of these people that are this like bloated bureaucracy, and all of those people, you can't get rid of enough of them. You have to get rid of like all of them. It's like cancer. I mean, that's what it is. It's an honest way of looking.
Well, it's Kyle Seraphin. Go and check him out, KyleSeraphin.com, at Kyle Seraphin everywhere. We appreciate the time and the access. You mentioned January 6th a few times. I thought we'd find out about January 6th on January 21st this year. I thought we would get all the information. How many agents were really there? How many undercover? What did Nancy Pelosi have to deal with it? Why did they turn on the National Guard? Was this a psyop? Was this a false flag? Feel me? We were going to get everything like at 12:30 on January 20th after Donald Trump got back into office. Why haven't we found out much of anything yet?
Why don't we know who the pipe bomber is? That was a big thing.
We have him on video doing it. And he's talking to somebody in what looks like an official vehicle not far from where he planted the bomb. Why don't we? I mean, what's the answer?
Yeah, I think the answer is that we've got people that really don't want that answer out. And I think that somebody has managed to either convince these guys that they can't share it and also still be in charge of that FBI as it is.
Yeah, but 77 million of us want it out, though. I mean, we voted.
I agree with you. Look,
we voted for all of that stuff.
We wanted to see all the names of. Remember, there was a request for the most virulent FBI agents that were using false tactics that were going after J6ers, right? And there was a lawsuit. Dude, that lawsuit, which represents the FBI Agents Association, is being fought by Mark Zaid, and it's also being fought by. What's that other guy that he's horrible?
I don't know.
Can't think of his name.
The horrible guy. I don't know.
He's the same guys that led the Trump impeachment. Now I can't think of his name, but anyways, escaped me. It doesn't. They have hard leftists, not nonpartisan actors that are. They have people that are hard leftists that have gone out there and been the like the cornerstones of lawfare.
You mean in Congress, like Jamie Raskin? Who are we talking about?
No, I'm talking about attorneys that actually were the ones that were arguing the prosecution, and it'll come to me as soon as we finish talking here. But
sure.
that's just the way it works. These guys they're not nonpartisan actors. They represent the FBI Agents Association, which has gone hard to the left. The people that work in the Bureau that are retired, they come out of it and they go like, I don't want to be part of the FBI Agents Association. They're a bunch of commies. They're run with leftist ideology. They want to take a knee to BLM. They paid the people, which we call Neil Team 6, who took a knee during the George Floyd riots that were going on in Washington, D.C. They paid them with gift cards and said that they were like the best among us. They were defending freedom. I mean...
And then they all made sure there were cameras around catching them doing it too. It is Kyle. I guess what I don't. Maybe I'm a simpleton, and you've told me this in person. I am a simpleton.
That is not true.
Why is it that 77 to 80 million Americans aren't more important than some idiots in the deep state? I mean, am I being too simple about this?
You know what?
They don't have dirt on 77 million people. We want answers. Answer to us.
I want them to. You know what I think happens? I think that they call it the bubble for a reason. The inside the Beltway crowd, it's a thing. And, you know, it's just like if you spend all your time on your Twitter feed, you think everybody is a terrible human being, right? I mean, you just think that everybody is mean and snarky, sarcastic, and they're inhumane to you. And so if you're surrounded by people in DC and that's all the people you are, this is the problem with having an FBI office, which, by the way, they just moved it. I don't know if you saw that, but they're moving to the Reagan building.
Yeah.
They're staying in Washington, D.C. It's the worst thing that you can do. You're taking an FBI that is broken and you're keeping it right where it is and you're giving it a new location or a new address, but it's the same problem. The problem is that people don't have to move out of Washington, D.C. to run the FBI. So your senior people there, and this is kind of inside baseball that doesn't make sense to a lot of people. In order to become the highest ranking people in the FBI, you have to have certain billets. You have to fill certain jobs. So you'll be a case agent, and then you'll be a supervisor, and then you got to go do program management at headquarters, and then you go back and forth. If you live in Washington, D.C., you never have to move. The key is that this was like Mueller's idea, that you would go out to the field offices and see what America was about. In fact, the rule is you can't even recruit out of the same office that you're going to be assigned to. If you live in Oklahoma City and you want to live in Oklahoma City, you go to Quantico, they'll send you off to like Minnesota because they will never send you back to where you're from. That's on purpose. That was supposed to make you more aware and more sympathetic and not corruptible and all these other kind of things. If you have everything in D.C., somebody gets a job in D.C. as a supervisor. They go over and they cross the street to the Hoover building or the Reagan building. It doesn't matter. They can walk to these things. They stay in the same house and they never go back to America.
And they believe that's reality.
They do. It's like a ping pong ball. There are two field offices where you can get all the managerial experience you want to become the top people. And this is why being at the Washington field office, which is where I started my career, is the scariest thing. It's the worst people. Every single senior person. I saw files in my little queue that I was working on that Peter Strzok approved. Counterintelligence investigations. Why in the world would I have that? Like that guy was a national, disgrace.
Yes.
And I had
he got paid off, by the way.
Yeah, you did. You got $1 million.
You're bringing up all this stuff. Lisa Page and Peter Strzok get paid knowing what they were saying on their devices that we're paying for, and they got paid somehow. So, I mean, are we just to accept that there's no Epstein client list and there's nothing else to see here? January 6th we'll probably never get to the bottom of. Are we going to find out the truth about the DOJ lying to FISA courts to surveil Trump Tower? Are we supposed to just accept that we're never going to get any answers to anything? Hell, we don't know about JFK yet. I thought we were releasing everything on that. That didn't even get the full release. Is this just to appease us, Kyle? Saying these things that we never really get the goods?
Yeah, I would have told you that we were never going to get the Epstein stuff right away. That just the first time that we didn't get them right away, right when it was the files are on my desk and you're going to get them tomorrow and we didn't.
Yeah.
It's like
they handed a bunch of binders to a bunch of influencers, and it didn't say anything new. There was nothing in there.
It's the worst. Look, it feels like you're getting played because you're getting played. When Cash and Dan go out on Fox News and they say, look, there's going to be a wave of transparency. It's going to hit you in the next week or two. And we're now 6 weeks away from that.
Yeah.
I remember dates. Like that's kind of what my old training was all about. Like it really matters when you say something if you don't deliver. In fact, those guys said a lot of that too. And so if you're not delivering, there's only two possibilities. They're dishonest actors, which is a possibility. We have to leave it out there. And the other possibility is that the people that are setting them up for failure. And then it makes them dishonest actors, whether they like it or not. And once you isolate those guys from the audience and the people and the American folks who are out there, and every text that Bongino puts out, because he puts out tweets on X as a, we've never seen a deputy director with that much fame or name recognition. You didn't know the last ones. You didn't know who Paula Bate was, right? You didn't know who David Bowditch was. Nope. You didn't know these guys. So unless you're an FBI agent, you don't know them. Now everybody knows who that person is. So what do? You drive a wedge between the audience by making them liars. And I think the Bureau has a vested interest in destroying these guys' credibility, at least to the people who hoped for change, because the status quo is undefeated. I say this all the time and I hate it. It's disgusting, but it's very, very hard to have momentum, which is why the first guy in the door should have grabbed that Bureau by the throat and started cutting them, metaphorically, of course, but they needed to go in there and draw blood. There needed to be a very solid, strong touch in the same way when you go grab a bad guy and he's bigger than you are. Your first touch better mean I'm not screwing around here. You're going into cuffs. And then they usually go like, okay, well, that guy, my options are either go into cuffs, fight this guy and get really hurt, or maybe get killed. I'm going to go into cuffs. I'll figure it out in court. That's the right answer. You have to touch the subject hard. We call them subjects, not suspects.
Right.
And that's what needed to happen. And that didn't happen. It was a soft touch. It was like, I'm here to help you guys. Like, I love the FBI. I'm so excited to be here. Nope. It should be like, a lot of you people are not going to work here tomorrow because a lot of you people are not worthy of this place.
FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin. It's Seraphin. Go to KyleSeraphin.com, at Kyle Seraphin on YouTube. It's also on X. Were you, Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle, and others offered your jobs back?
Absolutely not. No, in fact, Joe, the dark secret that's going on right now, and I've got a lot of friends that are in like political, touch just the way you are. There is an ongoing smear campaign that's coming out of the 7th floor from the FBI, and I'm confident that they misled Dan on us. Yeah. I just heard today from probably someone that is a mutual friend of ours. We can talk afterwards. I don't want to out the names, but that there's a slanderous story going around that I shot someone. So that's pretty funny.
Wow.
Because that obviously, here I am with all my guns with no charges, and that obviously didn't happen. That's absurd.
That was never an allegation.
No. Well, there was a crazy story that was told in Congress under oath where one of the FBI officials who fired me, she perjured herself and she said something that was ridiculously absurd, that I shot at somebody's head and I missed. And it was at a training event, which is absurd. And like I said, I would have lost my gun. I would have been in cuffs that day. There's no way I walk away after shooting at a fellow agent.
Not a chance.
So all of that's crazy. Of course, that only came out after I did a whistleblower activity in October of 2021. The allegation was that something happened in April of 2022. And of course, I lost my job a couple days later. It only took them 1 day to get rid of me. Not me, not Garrett O'Boyle, not Steve Friend. Marcus Allen's not invited back. In fact, he was made whole by the FBI in the condition that he resign as well and not ever work there again. Additional others whose names are not public.
Yeah, but Kyle, I want those watching and listening to understand that was either it was said overtly or it was suggested that all of you would be brought back and what you blew the whistle about would be handled. We would get back on the pedophilia and get rid of them. We would stop going and taking down license plates at the churches and at school board meetings. We would start actually doing investigative work again. I think one of your suggestions was take the arms from FBI agents and use local law enforcement, and the FBI can go in there and actually investigate and not be this law enforcement, almost military unit that shows up at somebody's house who protested abortions. So none of that came true?
None. Not only that, one of the big things that people knew my name from is because I wasn't the original whistleblower, but I did expose the fact that they were going after Catholics, right?
Yes.
That happened out of the Richmond field office. The guy who was the head of the field office is a guy named Stanley Meador, and he's been appearing in videos with Kash Patel. He stood behind him while Kash was talking about let good cops be cops. The guy's right behind him, and anybody in the Bureau sees that and goes, well, if they're going to let Stanley off the hook, we're fine. Wow. That's why they unpacked their boxes, because within a week or two, that guy's getting prominently, not only he's got social media now, because they're all the field offices have media. They're doing video hits with these guys. They're retweeting them by the director. He's getting, attention. He's going to be able to get a good retirement gig. Those people are all safe. All of the people that did some of the worst things. The guy that actually denied my COVID, my religious accommodation request. Right. Illegally, by the way. We have an ongoing lawsuit. I asked Kash for one thing and one thing only, because I didn't want my job back. I don't want to go back and work for the FBI ever again. After what I've seen, like, who wants to go get stabbed in the back?
I hear you.
I asked him for one thing. I said, settle our lawsuit, because we have a very credible lawsuit. I have black letter violations of Title VII, religious discrimination, and more.
Yes.
And so just settle the lawsuit with us. We just 2 days ago, we got back from our attorneys that our discovery was stonewalled. The FBI turned over 0 documents that we requested. And they were like personnel files. They weren't even, even contentious. 0 zero cooperation with our attorneys. So now we're going in. They refuse to certify us as a class, which is fine. The DOJ looks out for itself. But we're not even dealing with a friendly DOJ. It's like at least semi-hostile, if not openly hostile against the whistleblowers. And as I said, they are smearing us. They are saying that there are character issues, no further information. I just sort of vaguely found out today for the first time that apparently I shot somebody, which is my favorite.
It's Kyle Seraphin. Kyle, again, I'm going to say it for the 5th time. I like Cash. I like Dan. I like Pam. So what's going on? Are they just buying the lies? Is there leverage at play here? Why would they, again, you and Steve and Garrett, I know the three of you, I don't know Marcus, but you guys are above reproach. Nothing that you've said has ever been called out and shown to be factually untrue. So what's the issue? Are these guys really good schmoozers that are in the deep state? Are Cash and Dan just oblivious that they're being played? I mean, what do you really think is going on here? It's easy to see where I would say there are good guys and bad guys. I think that you guys are the good guys, and I think those deep staters are the bad guys. So why believe the bad guys? Because going in, they didn't believe them. Going in, they hated the deep state. Going in, they're going to clean it up.
That's right. The day before Cash went in front of the Senate to be confirmed, he called me and asked me for advice. I mean, I was a trusted source of information. I have the text messages saying that all the guys are going to get their jobs back. Obviously, I told him I didn't want it, but the other guys would be, and that was not the case. To be fair, Steve Friend told me on my podcast the other morning that Dan Bongino personally called him and said, "Would you come work for me and be a consultant to help me know what's going on around me?" That was the last time we heard from Dan.
Wow.
So there are people that are chirping in their ears, and whether that made these guys like, look, if you go back on the people that got you into the positions, that were telling you the things, that were your inside sources, that gave up a lot of things. You know, I'm not going to complain about my life, but I lost my home, and my pregnant wife was homeless with my 3 children. Now I have 4 kids. And so we had a pretty rough ride for a pretty long period of time. I went 14 months without any pay, any income, trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And obviously there's no obvious way that you're going to go back. When you worked for the FBI, you're not going to go get another job in law enforcement. If they fired you, if they said that you shot somebody and they're out there, I got blackballed. I guarantee you, we've been trying to find this in the lawsuit. I guarantee you I got blackballed from other federal agent jobs that I tried to leave the Bureau before they even got rid of me. I was like, hey, I'll just go do something else, man. I don't need to be here. So I didn't have any of that stuff. I don't have a good answer for you. What I have are a lot of questions. I have the text messages saying that they were going to make things whole. I had all the expectations everybody else did that they were going to do it right. And I have a lot of frustration, but more importantly, I am really worried about America because, like, as I said, I landed on my feet. The other guys are still feeding their kids. People were generous when they gave a Give, Send, Go together and they helped Garrett. And so he's not in danger of not being able to feed his children. So that's big. Right. But we're talking about an agency that was weaponized about Americans. And like, we're maybe 2 years away from it going back to that. We're maybe 3 years. It could happen in a heartbeat because all the same people, all the same attitudes, all the same bad actors, and all the same policies are still in existence. And they're still promoting the worst. A lot, like Steve Jensen is in charge of the Washington field office, and he was the section chief that ran all of the terror investigations into J6ers. He's the one that there would be terrorism enhancements. You could say that people like Matthew Perna's life are actually attributable to him. The fact that Matthew Perna decided to take his life because of terrorist enhancements, that was done through what's called the domestic terrorism operations section. And that was the thing that he was in charge of. He now runs the most powerful public corruption investigation group in the country, the Washington field office of the FBI.
But by the way, Matthew Perna was there. He didn't do anything, didn't vandalize, didn't riot. He was taking a selfie pretty much and documenting what was going on. His aunt, Jerry, who we've had on the program, says that's why he took his life, because of the upgrade in the terrorism charges, which made no sense. So none of this makes any sense to me. Those watching and listening, obviously Kyle has a vested interest because, again, he's talked to these people. He's advised these people. He knows these people. He was told what I was told. I've got a vested interest because I've had them both on my show plenty of times. I know them both personally, and I was brought up, my show was brought up in the actual confirmation hearings. You had the idiot from Minnesota, Amy What's-Her-Face, who was actually questioning Kash Patel about going on the Joe Pag show. You said this. What is your response? So we're vested in this because we really believe in these guys. I still do. I think to a level you might, not as much as I do, but I need something catastrophic to happen tomorrow, something earth-shattering to happen tomorrow. They say, hey, this is what's really going on. We had to put that out there because, and you don't think that's coming.
No, I think you can't tell me, just trust me that many times. There have been multiple appeals to authority on all the different interviews I've seen, whether it be, they're mostly Fox interviews, if we're being honest about it, right? But Dan and Kash have both done the exact same thing. They both said, would I be the kind of guy who would have this? Cash did it on Rogan as well. They went out there. Would I be the kind of guy that would see this kind of thing and not do it? It's like, I don't know. That's not an answer. That's a question. Yeah. That is the logical sort of trick that you're playing. And so the answer should be, look, honest operators would do this. I would expect this of you, Joe, and we don't even know each other that well, but I have a pretty good instinct of who you are as a person. We've met in person. We've shook hands. If something happened where it was a complete change, you'd call me up and you'd be like, look, here's the deal. I didn't know the following things. Now I know this, this, and this. This is why these things will not happen. I'm just going to lay my cards on the table. I feel terrible about it, but that's what's up. If they did that with the American people, we'd all go, okay.
You've seen me post, and I've seen you post. Then we contacted each other personally, and I went, Kyle, what's this? And you've been completely above board the entire time. That's why I don't understand the complete turnaround, the about face on stuff you and I really felt they were going to do. And I just wonder if it's an overwhelming amount of pressure that I don't understand, that you've explained very well so far. Is it some sort of a game that's being played that eventually we're going to see the light at the end of the tunnel? Because you can't tell me JFK is closed. You can't tell me January 6th is closed. You can't tell me Epstein is closed. I'm not buying it. I'm way too skeptical for that. We didn't get anything that makes us go, I get it now. You know what I'm saying? And that's where the frustration I think roots.
All right, you want a black pill soup here, because this is the thing that this is on my worst moments. This is what I'm concerned about. I do think that they're very different types of men, Cash and Dan. I think that they are differently motivated, and I think that they are working in a place full of people that recruit sources and run sources and manipulate people for a living. It turns out if you're an FBI agent, you're trying to do it to get the best investigations and get America sort of the safest outcome. That's theoretically the goal. But when you're a senior FBI manager, your goal is to basically upgrade your own position and continue your own status.
Right.
Here's what I think if I was going to assess Cash and Dan independently and what I would lean on them about. Cash told me in a way that I think is very unsettling now that I've reflected on it over a few months, that he would be equally happy and equally good at being the CIA director or the FBI director. That can't be. Those are not the same skill set. And that is not a real thing. Now, I wanted him to be the FBI director because I knew him. I have his personal number, right? I could call him up and I could ask him something. I won't do that anymore because we're not close like that. And my concern was, if anybody who says I could be either this, I could either be an elephant or I'd be a great giraffe. And you'd go, like, those aren't really related. That's not even close. That tells me you just want to be a guy that's in the circus. I think he wanted to be in the Trump administration desperately. He's in the Trump administration. He's a person that flies around in a $60 million aircraft. He has a 20-man security detail. He's been tasked out to do this, and he gets to go and, kiss babies and be kind of like a prince that we all pay for. He's living like a billionaire. And because people who have hundreds of millions of dollars don't fly in $60 million aircraft. They're too expensive. Right. The FBI director, this was my complaint against Chris Wray as well, so I'm very consistent, flies around like a prince, like a billionaire, like a member of American royalty, and we all foot the bill. And that's a pretty good gig if you're the kind of person that always wanted that thing. Yeah, I do think that's Cash, unfortunately. So I think that's the black pill version of it, that he's got what he wanted. And so Kyle Seraphin, Joe Pags, irrelevant at this point. What they want is not really important. Let's do the Dan thing, though, because I think Dan actually got asked. I think he got asked to do something that he probably shouldn't have said yes to, but he didn't want to say no. Because if you're honest, if Donald Trump, God forbid, calls me up, and I say God forbid because I don't want this call ever, like the closest I've had conversations with Don Jr. But if President Trump called up Kyle and said, look, I need you to step in and be the deputy director of the FBI, I would say, absolutely not, sir, but I would love to help you find the right guy. Nice. I'm not it. I will do an honest assessment, and Kyle Seraphin's not that guy. I was in the FBI for 6 years. I know what I know. I have a really good source network of contacts. I can find you somebody that is ideologically pure, that understands the organization, has the depth of experience that I don't, and will solve this problem. I was in for 6 years. That's about 25 times more time than Dan Bongino has been in the FBI at this point. And I don't know enough to do that job. I don't think he does either. But he also is in now a terrible position. It's an awful situation where he said yes, because I think probably Trump asked him to. And he wanted to do the right thing. He thought it was a service-oriented deal. So he went out there, and if he was successful, man, I would have been his biggest cheerleader. We've had some personal beef that is unfortunate, and I still would have cheered it because it would have been an American victory. We could all get behind it. Yeah. I think that he is going to have to leave. I think, and this is just it's not a great prediction. I'm not thrilled about it, but I think he's going to be gone by the end of the year. And I think either a family emergency is going to call him out, so some plausible cover, or he's going to step out and say, look, I couldn't fix it inside the FBI. I'm going to run for office. Maybe I can do it from the Senate. Maybe I can do it in some sort of a legislative role, or maybe something else. Because I think Dan's always had an interest in being in politics. He's got all the money.
Run, yeah.
Yeah, he's run before. He talks about it fairly frequently. He's got all the money he's going to need to have. He's independently wealthy. He told me that right away. He said, look, I've got generational wealth. I don't have to worry about money again. That was one of our first conversations. Right. So I do think that's the most likely thing, is that he's out of his depth, but he doesn't want to admit surrender because there's a little bit of pride there. And if we know Dan's he's not a not proud guy.
Yeah.
He's a man. He's a man's man.
Yeah.
So that's a rough situation to be put in. I don't envy it. I'm not like thrilled about dunking on the stuff that they're doing, but I am going to keep pointing out what's real, because I do want the outcomes that I want. And I want Americans to get those outcomes, because I'm telling you, there is nothing more dangerous to American liberty in the United States in 2025 than an FBI that continues the way that it did for the last 8 years. And honestly, if we're being real, the reason that why we were at the police state preview that we were at, the reason we were there is because after 9/11, we had a different definition of national security, and the FBI is the cancerous outgrowth of that. And that thing will kill us as a country. It will kill our liberties. It invades the First Amendment. It invades the Second Amendment. It invades the Third Amendment. Honestly, if we're talking about the quartering situation, what do you think the FISA is? What are soldiers living in your living room other than spies for the crown who can hear everything you're doing? And honest to God, the FISA is a way that they could put microphones in your house, or they can tap all your phones so that they do what you want, that your cameras turn on for them. That is a quartering of government troops in your home. And so having a warrant that only a few secret people get to see, it is antithetical to America. And so we just had the 4th of July. Think about those things. It has to be fixed. It's not an option. It's a do or die situation. So I'm really passionate, obviously.
Obviously, it's Kyle Seraphin. Kyle, I appreciate you taking the time. Go to Kyle Seraphin, both on YouTube, on X. Go to kyleseraphin.com. And again, it's Seraphin, former FBI agent, an FBI whistleblower. I'll end it with this, and I appreciate you coming on the podcast. We've gone long form, which is great. People who take in my podcast will love this. We'll also play some of this in the radio show. I like Dan. I didn't think that he should have gone for that job. I've often said, when people asking, should Dan be this, should Dan be that? My answer was, I like him in the role he's in now. He's an information guy. He's a communications guy. He's very successful at it. He's got millions of fans and followers. I would like for him to stay there. I was surprised that he got that job. I was hoping Kash would be a member of the Trump administration. I thought maybe Attorney General. I didn't see him as the FBI director, but God bless him. He's going to be the FBI director. Do what you said you would do. So far, he hasn't. I hope that he proves us both wrong. Kyle, I appreciate the time and the access and the friendship. The information you just gave made my head hurt in a good way. That I didn't. The quartering thing. My God, the Third Amendment comes into this. Didn't even think about that. What you said makes perfect sense in the day and age of technology. And of course, the whole Patriot thing. What was it? The Patriot Act that happened after 9/11? That should have
destroyed the Fourth Amendment as well. Right?
A long time ago, it should have gone away. Let's do this again very soon. Thanks for taking the time today. I hope everybody goes and checks out what you do, and I'm glad that you and your family are good after those massive floods. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Joe.
That's it for Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags. Another episode to drop soon. Keep it right here.